what was happening in the Vegas shooting at which you were a survivor?
In the period of time where we didn't know what was going on, didn't know if there were multiple shooters, I realized in that moment that this wasn't the life I was meant to live. I've been living my life using a certain playbook for a long time. It woke me up out of that dream. We chased this net worth thing. Get honest, wherever you are in your life, is it actually delivering on what I thought it would when I was told this? Your belief system starts to get challenged and proven false. And if you have the balls to go deeper into that inquiry, I think you find most of the things you were told growing up are just not true.
One thing that's great about having a conversation with you, Kyle, is I don't have to be concerned if my teeth are black and green.
Yeah, you're amongst you.
I always have my little stash over here, you know, and if I don't know the person that well, it's a little bit funny sometimes.
Yeah.
Just like, ignore me, just keep talking.
Yeah.
And
they don't know, they're not sure, like, when you do that, like, I'm on for at least a minute more.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah, otherwise we're going to have the Puff the Magic Dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of a hard thing to explain to people. But sometimes I'll get caught and then like they're expecting a response. And I'm like, I'm not ready to have my mouth full.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just tell people I'm chewing a green smoothie or something. So where I want to start with you, my friend, and by the way, it's so hilarious that we've been friends for quite a few years now. And I've been like, hey, come on the podcast sometimes. It's classic. I'm sure the audience, the regular listeners will know this. It was the same thing with my friend Doyle. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been telling him like, yeah, come on the podcast anytime. Oh, we'll do it. It's taken me like 5 years to get him on. You know? It's the same thing with you. When your book, Unlearn, for those watching the video, when your book was coming out, I was like, hey, come on and do your book. You're like, yeah, okay, whatever. You're such a non-promotional kind of guy, you know, but now it's actually out. So I'm like, okay, I'm like, let's let people know what you're all about. So I'm stoked to have this conversation. Where I want to start is I want to go to the nitty-gritty of the gnarly of the gnarlies. Tell me what was happening in the 15 minutes leading up to the Vegas shooting at which you were a survivor.
Yeah. So for those who don't remember, and a lot of people kind of forget that the largest mass shooting on U.S. soil happened in Las Vegas at the Route 91 Fest, which
the media memory hold it like so fast.
It was in the news cycle for 3 days.
Yeah.
And that's a whole separate podcast. Someone that, you know, our friend Ian Carroll did a great one with Tucker Carlson at the end of the year that if you want to know more about actually what happened in Vegas, I'm not going to go into it today because it's the whole thing. Fascinating.
Yeah, that was a really good breakdown.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, 3 days it was in the news cycle, something that none of the theories ended up making any sense, and there's a reason for that. But yeah, man, I was at the concert Sunday night, Route 91 Fest. Jason Aldean was playing. I was there with a buddy of mine who happened to be friends with Jason. So we were, you know, kind of in the great kind of VIP section, side stage, and I was getting pretty tired. We'd had a long weekend in Vegas. And I wanted to save up for after the show. We were going to meet up with the guys after the show. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go home, take a nap for like an hour, and then we'll hook up after. My buddy Adam's like, okay, just one more beer. I'm like, okay, I'll have one more beer. So we went over to the VIP tent to get the beer. And as we're just about ready to part ways, we're probably 5 minutes or so where I'm going to start heading towards the hotel, which was where the firing was coming from. I wasn't staying at Mandalay, but we were staying in that area. Adam and I were like, what's going on? You know, so everything was obviously great up until then. The shooting starts to happen. And my first reaction is someone's lighting off firecrackers. Kind of pissed because I couldn't really hear the sounds. Like, what the fuck? Continues. I then think, well, maybe there's some sort of power line shorting. It was a weird kind of cracking sound. And then that didn't really track either. And so Adam and I found ourselves behind these tour buses, which were in between where the shooting was coming from, and right behind us was the stage. We kind of huddle in as close as we can to the tour bus, and I want to say there were 50, 60 people there. No one knows what's going on. One guy in the back is kind of directing traffic, like, hey, everybody, there's shooting going on. Get as close as you can to the tour bus. Think you'll be fine. Someone had gotten hit in the period of the shooting in kind of back of where we were, like hit in the arm. The guy who was former military identified what type of bullets they were. He's like, if you get hit, you'll be fine unless you get hit someplace critical, but they're not whatever, more lethal than maybe some of us were expecting. And then we were there for probably 10 minutes just taking cover, and then the shots stop. And after a few more minutes, the SWAT team's like, you guys go this direction opposite of where the firing was coming. If you hear shots, like, take cover, basically, but just go as far as you can in that direction as fast as you can. And so we did. And on the way out, there were people in some, pretty bad shape. We ended up helping one woman that was injured, shot, I think, in the kind of gut area. Helped her over a fence to get her a little bit more assistance, and then we just kept going. And on our way to walk past back to the casino, that wasn't an option anymore. Everything was on shutdown, so we just kept walking as far as we could until we ended up, it must have been 20, 30 minutes later at a hospital where they were staging ambulances. It was a fire station where they were stationing ambulances. So we just sat there for a while. They're like, you can't come inside, but you're welcome to just be here. We eventually get an Uber to where Aldine's team was staying out in Henderson. Get an Uber, go out there, get to the house. Everyone's watching the news, like, what the fuck just happened? And eventually fall asleep, wake up, head back to the hotel in the morning. So this is Monday, and then I flew back to Austin. So a lot going on just in the, that's kind of the sequence of events. But you can imagine in the period of time where we didn't know what was going on, didn't know if there were multiple shooters, didn't know if they were coming to the concert grounds. I'm in this state of what's going on. Almost like a bit of a life review happened. And I had this deep sense of like sadness and like, like a lack of fulfillment doesn't really cover it. But I realized in that moment that the life that I had been building and creating and was really proud of and had, in so many ways overachieved anything I could have imagined as a young kid. And that was my North Star, just continue to build this life. I realized in that moment that this wasn't the life I was meant to live. Like, none of those things were coming to save me in that moment. And I didn't even really know what that meant, but it felt very empty. And I wasn't afraid of dying. And I think, from what I can sense in those situations, it doesn't really cross people's minds because it's such a different situation that, I'd ever been in, where literally I had to surrender my life. Like, I don't know, I can't defend myself if someone's coming around. Like, that whole part of the brain turns off and your body listens to, like, in survival mode. And so whatever this guy was saying, I really trusted him, who was kind of managing our group. And so I just listened, and I didn't necessarily think about the consequences of not existing anymore. Like, it just didn't cross my mind, but I got very clear on what I was meant to do in the situation. And again, just left there, what was that? Like, and it took me quite a long time, almost a year and a half, until I really understood what had maybe awoken in me in that moment. And it was that I've been living my life using a certain playbook for a long time, and it's a very familiar playbook for most people that want to achieve and have success in our culture. But fortunately for me, it woke me up out of that dream that this is the thing that's going to provide fulfillment and fill that void that, I finally realized that I was trying to fill. And so that just took me on a journey, kind of unconsciously for a while, but then it became like, oh, this is actually why I'm here. I'm here to find out why I'm here. And as I got deeper into that work over the last 8+ years, it started to come to me in different frameworks. One of the ones that's been kind of most relevant for me recently is I'm here to kind of learn my blind spots and show up at the altar, whatever that altar is, whatever the prayer is, to be like, show me what I'm not seeing from, what's in the way for me right now. What are these old patterns? And there's many different ways to do it, which I discuss in the book, obviously. And you and I have had a fair amount of work with plant medicines. We've had a lot of work with men's work. I've done silent meditations. I've really tried to do just about everything because I'm curious to use these different strategies to show me a different version of me, a different perspective on how I'm moving through the world in relationship with my wife, Peyton, with my kids, with my friends, with finances, my relationship to the podcast, this book. Like, what does that feel like? We have all these ideas until we get into the process. That's where I feel like it's been my podcast for the past 6 years is the Great Unlearn. To really get in to those parts of us that we can't see, we got to be real honest with ourselves. And I've had a lot of great mentors along the way who have held that line for me. And in a lot of ways, I've just tried to follow in their footsteps and then find my own way with whatever the different practices, medicines, whatever they are. Just get curious about how I'm meant to work with these things.
It's interesting that that tragedy ended up being a catalyst for you, because it's something that is, you're experiencing it, but it's external to you, right? Where a lot of people might achieve a certain level of success in their career and things like that, as you did. You're functioning at a really high level in terms of the way our culture measures success. You were having all of that. And oftentimes it's something that's more internally based. You get into addiction or have some sort of internal crisis that causes you to pause and kind of evaluate yourself in your life. It's interesting that, you're just living your life out in Vegas at a concert, and something that dramatic happens outside of you that you didn't contribute to that kind of, if you want to call it a hitting a bottom or awakening, right? It's like most of us, I think, make decisions in our lives that eventually, paint us into a corner and cause us to have to look at ourselves. And, the percentage of people that probably do look at themselves when they're painted in a corner is exceedingly small. But that's how it was for me. And most people I know, it's like you're charging through life, doing the best you can, making, not the greatest decisions. And ultimately you have to face yourself. But I find the beginning of your awakening interesting, because you were just in the right place at the right time / wrong place at the wrong time simultaneously. It's interesting that it is kind of like a near-death experience that causes you to have that life review and start to inventory who you are and what you're all about. But it's like, I wonder if and when that would have happened had you not gone that night, right? The karmic sort of side of it, would you just have kept plodding along and maybe your marriage, didn't work out, or something else could have fallen apart that was more personal to you? But it's like there was an intervention prior to that happening that just put you on course to evolve.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. I hadn't really thought about it in such that way. I was definitely having signs in my life that were showing me come on, man, this is not it. And I wasn't like awake enough to pick up on those signs. Now, had this experience not happened, I'm quite certain my life would have fallen off the rails in some way. And what the outcome of that would have been, I have no idea. I don't know that I would feel as good about where things are in my life, particularly with my relationship with my wife and my kids, if that hadn't happened. I mean, I definitely had my bouts with dependency. I don't know if it dipped into addiction. I don't really even know what the differences are, but I had those things in my life that I was turning to not face what wanted to be faced, not feel what wanted to be felt. And in Vegas opened me up to a kind of a new version of me, of living, of what maybe a legacy looks like, or really just, holy shit, I don't really know anything. Everything that I believe was told to me, right? Which you've been in the deep study of. And that was like my awakening to this unlearning, seeing things a completely different way. And, you know, it took me many more years, I would say. It wasn't until 2020, 3+ years later, where this whole other world opened up to me, you know, which I think happened for a lot of people with what happened, you know, starting in 2020. But, you know, I'm thankful I was on the path when that was happening, because I was much more open to life being much different than what I had perceived it to be. But yeah, man, even after that, and even after I had done my first plant medicine ceremony that I felt was really beautiful and helpful, I definitely still had struggles in my relationship. And I had a couple seasons in the last 6 years where, whew, I thought I had it figured out, you know, with the awakening, the plant medicines. And I was told pretty clearly, not necessarily with the direct words, but from my relationship with my wife, that, bro, you got work to do. And that was confronting. I was like, I thought I had all the answers. It's like, no, bro, you got to integrate this shit, man. That's what they keep saying. And until you actually start to integrate stuff, you don't understand that you're not integrating it. And I, you know, made the mistake that I think many people make when they go into these areas, and, you know, these plant medicines can give you insight into how things are. You get to view your life almost in a disassociated sense of like really acceptance. And
You get like a rarefied objectivity window,
that's
right?
that's
Where you
it.
can kind of, you might meditate for 20, 30 years to build that observer witness position where you're able to kind of step out of yourself and see yourself in the whole picture, right? And those medicine experiences can be so revelatory, but it is also really easy to forget what you saw. You know?
It fades.
Yeah. You come back out in the habituation, right? The inertia of the way that you think and feel and operate in the world. If it's not, in my experience, if I haven't really taken steps to interrupt that and pivot in a big way, I'll just sort of fall back into that same pattern. I observed that the other day. I did a episode, I think it actually came out this week, about combo, you know, and the practitioner who I had on is great. And I had a feeling she might ask me if I wanted to do it. And I was like, hell no. I did that, I don't know, maybe in 2016, 15, I forget when it was. A long time ago, I did one and it was brutal. But I've been really using the mambe and the nicotine and stuff a lot. And so by the end of that conversation, I thought, let's give it a shot. So we did a ceremony up here, and it was really nice. She didn't give me too much. It wasn't incredibly intense. And I think I've told you this story, but just for those listening that might have habits, I wouldn't say like addictions per se, but just attachments, habits to things, whether it's sugar, social media, or whatever. And I was sensing I was a little more attached than I would like to be. So that was kind of the intention that I set. And over the course of the couple of days after that, I was like, wow, I felt like this totally detached from some of those habits. And I thought, well, I'm good now. And then after a couple of days, I started using it again. It just went full blown 100% back on every day, all day. I was like, oh, that was such a good lesson. And, I was given a little window of freedom of choice there. And I took the choice back and thought that I could kind of manage it again, and quickly learned like, no, you're right back to where you were. It's interesting. It's difficult to interrupt habits.
It is. And I think that's a great example too, because we get a glimpse, we see it, we feel it, but it's fleeting. It's not doing 20, 30 years of it, boom, and we're changing something. And underneath, for me, like what I saw that felt objectively true and allowed my ego to just chill, and in me to see like, oh, it's kind of not your fault in some ways. Okay, phew, I can get over that. I can accept this is where I'm at. Okay, so what are the steps? And the steps are, for me, it's been finding those patterns that God embedded or planted with the work we did with Kyle Coursey. That seed that was planted is not until I'm able to get to some of those core seeds when I was a young kid that I perceived a relationship with my dad a particular way, and then I adapted in a way to earn his love, be valuable, achieve whatever. It's not until that work with Kyle that I started to see those things and I started to let go of them. And my relationship to substances completely changed after the work with Kyle. Now, what I'll say is what's been really cool about it. So I did the work with Kyle. It's been almost 4 months since I did it. And about a month ago, I recognized that I was back to using cannabis a bit. And it became apparent to me after 3 or 4 days of why. And it was that there was some like distortion in my life, some old pattern that wanted to come to the surface. And I was numbing myself to not feel like the angst or the anxiety of what was coming up. And so I feel like my system's much more clear. So then when I drop into these old behaviors, I can actually identify why. It's not just such a like, fuck, it could be anything. I know what's being asked of me right now. And it's happened even over the last couple of days. I've been definitely had a few gummies over the weekend and was chilling, and which felt good, but it's like, okay, dude, this is an old part of your playbook that was a significant part, and you've let go of a lot of it, but there's still some pieces in there that you need to explore and release. And so I don't know that I'll ever like have the relationship in a constant way that I did right after the work with Kyle. And I don't even know if I need to. I think what's really cool is I've been able to identify when I'm really trying to avoid what wants to be, worked with right now.
A more clear self-awareness.
I think so. Yeah. But I still don't fucking know. I'm still curious. Like, is that really what's going on? I mean, it works for me right now, and it's calling me into the center of the circle. Or like, okay, dude, like sharpen up, like put the gummies away for a little bit, work on this, and then like, let's see what unfolds from there. But it's been, for me, the past 3 years has been a pretty intense at times, initiation. And for me in particular, it's around finances, and it's around what this idea I had around making money and achievement in that space, and what it was going to provide for me from a young age. And it kind of did all those things and a lot more, but I wasn't really clear on the shadow side. And I think, I've done so much in the world of investing, whether it's real estate or some venture capital stuff, consumer packaged goods. Like, there's been a lot of things that I've been involved with over the last 25 years, and some things worked out really well. And it's just not a strategy that's working for me going forward. So I'm in the process of taking this playbook, which was working really well, not as well for the reasons I thought. And so I got pretty humbled there, which needed to happen. And so I'm trying to pick out the pieces of like my trading career, which, what were the things that made me a really successful trader? Knowing when to move on from an investment, and really that humility to take a loss on something that I thought was a really good bet. And I did that for 18 years. I have a deep practice in that, but I wasn't translating enough of that experience into my kind of everyday life. And so it's been a real deep inquiry, painful at times, but a way for me to look at everything and say, what of these things are serving me and will serve me in the future, and what is no longer serving me, and how can I kind of, in a lot of ways, untangle these things to create the life I want going forward. It's a little bit like what we were talking about before we got on. It's like, I feel like this last 3 years has been like a big season, but in particular, at the end of the year, I had something that really forced me into clarity. And right now, there's like another wave of it, which has been great, because had that last wave been the one, there's a piece that came up for me recently over the weekend that I recognized, like, oh, it's time to let go of this. And I didn't know that I would have done that a month ago. And I feel pretty clear about that. And I see the freedom that I am actually seeking on the other side of that. So it's really, I've spent so many years of my life. I'm 54 now. I started making pretty decent money in my mid-20s. And so I've been on a almost 30-year accumulation phase. And it was apparent to me maybe 3 years ago, that all this accumulation was really creating this anchor in like so much to manage.
Yeah.
That it's like, I got the experience of all these things, and what of these things do I actually want in my life? And it's not many of them. And so I need to actually also not go to an old pattern, which is just fucking burn it down and just start getting rid of shit. Because when I'm done, I'm done. And I'm choosing not to do that. I'm choosing how to let go in a good way. And it's not about getting the best price either, because that can conflate my decision making. Sometimes you just have to actually almost always you have to take what the market bears. And so even if I think something that I'm holding is worth significantly more, if it's the thing I need to move and the market is not necessarily where I want it to be, I still may need to transact there. And that's something that I'm hoping all my years of showing the benefit of that while I was trading, taking like a big financial loss, because it freed me up to do other things. And so that's what I'm feeling in my own life. These things that I'm holding on to, a bet that I thought was a good bet in my own life, is holding me back from really experiencing the life that I want to experience. And so there's a lot in there that I've already had a deep experience with that I'm just trying to translate in a good way.
I used to think burnout was just the price you had to pay for being productive. Then I found something that helps me stay focused for as long as I need without feeling smoked afterward. It's called NewCalm. It uses a neuroacoustic software to help shift out of fight or flight and into deep recovery in like 10 minutes. And the cool thing is there's no gadgets to buy or haul around. You just throw on headphones, open the app, and within minutes you start to downshift or upshift if that's what you're looking for. I've been busy writing a book for the past couple years, and it's one of the most mentally demanding things I've ever done. I'm talking hours and hours of deep focus, revisiting old memories, and organizing a ton of ideas. So before I start a writing session, I'll use one of their flow state tracks to get me into Zen. Then I'll lock in with a focus track for the next few hours of writing. And I'll tell you what, my wife can attest to this. When I have those headphones on, it's literally impossible to distract me. I'm like a machine. Then afterward, I'll use recharge or rescue to help my brain and body recover from hours of intense work. Just 20 minutes of that feels like a full nervous system reset, and New Calm science supports that. I highly recommend you check out New Calm, and here's how you do it. Go to lukestory.com/newcalm to start your free 7-day trial. That's free 7-day trial, folks. You'll also save 15% off your subscription. So whether you need better sleep, sharper focus, or a fast reset, New Calm has a track for it. And again, here's the link, lukestory.com/newcalm. That's NUCALM to get that 15% off. And whether or not you buy it, I highly recommend you at least give yourself 7 days for free. You're the only close friend I have that comes from such a different world. You know, when I first met you and you said, oh, I built this, I don't know what it's called, trading firm. It's like a world I know nothing about, the stock market, finance, like I'm just totally clueless. In fact, I was taking Elizabeth Ralph's course, recently, and I was really busy with my book stuff, so I missed a few of them. I think I missed the ones in the beginning where she's like, this is what the stock market is. This is how you get, like, I don't know, you join this Schwab website or whatever. This is how you buy stocks. Like, I missed that whole part. So I still don't understand it, but I just love that you came from such a different world and now we share this world. But when you talk about your past, it's still so vague to me. But what I find interesting, and this is where I'd love to hear your answers to this, is like, okay, so you were really financially successful pretty young, right? Like you beat the game as the game is laid out in Western culture, right? Get financial security, build wealth, become somebody, build a name, et cetera. You get some security and significance, and there's a lot of benefits to becoming wealthy. What I wonder is, it's like if you're who you are today and some of your energy is going to worrying about money or worrying about decisions you have to make, and kind of playing the monopoly board of what you want to do with your assets and investments and things like that. It seems to me, and this has been my experience, that it doesn't really matter how much money I make in relation to how much I worry about my decisions, my future. What does this all look like, right? It's like, I think I'm more successful in that regard at this point in my life at 55 than I ever have been. Yet I honestly feel broke all the time. And like, there's not enough. And it's like my lifestyle just always kind of rises to meet whatever, whatever income. And so it seems like the mindset of like worrying about that side of your life is more important than actually fixing that part of your life, right? Because if you transposed me into my life 20 years ago with like what my overhead was at that time, I mean, I'm like totally rich at the moment, right? But it's like, I guess the question is, have you found that no matter where you are on that spectrum of financial security or wealth, that you like your concerns about it and your worry will just rise with it? Has that been your experience? Or did you ever get to a point where you're like, I don't need to think about this anymore. Or like, I'm good. I could basically retire and I don't need to spend my time and energy, trying to get this all right.
Yeah, I think it's a great question.
In other words, maybe I could say it like this. Like, I think many of us think there's a point at which we will have made it, right? And we hit this point where we're like, we're secure, we have enough invested and we're good. And then life will just get easy and we won't have to worry about it anymore. But it seems like, the few people I know that have really achieved success in that area say you kind of never stop worrying about it until you change your mindset and reframe it. And I get the sense that's kind of what you've been doing for the past couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. So I always tried to live below my means, no matter how much money I was making. And I did that for quite a long time. So for a long time, I had no care in the world about that. And then we moved to Austin here in 2013. I had gotten out of trading, and I had a good chunk of capital from, when I was trading that was in the company. And I just started to put it into work in the market in different ways. And it was churning and it was making money and that was great. And so as that happened, much like you, I was rising a little bit more to that level of how much money I was making. So I wasn't adhering to live below my means. And I'm quite certain a lot of that was just unchecked ego stuff. I did a pretty good job of keeping it subtle, not ostentatious, but I started to accumulate. And a lot of it's just personal properties that are expensive to, the annual nut's pretty good. And when you've got money coming in all the time, that's not a big deal. But when the market has been what it's been over the last 5 years, it can be confronting. And so I think your observations is pretty accurate. It doesn't mean that even if you have a lot of financial success, you're going to have the shit that I did. That was just my journey with it. I've known this, for when this came, I've had it a few times, maybe I think in like 2016, 17, there was another kind of little blip where I had to deal with it, got through that, everything was humming along again. And then over this past one, I remember early on, I was like super frustrated with myself. I'm like, dude, how the fuck did you get in this situation? You've got all this net worth. Like, how did this happen? And it's taken me a long time of that serious, honest inquiry to see all my parts in that. And I'm still uncovering it for sure. But I think it's just like anything else, at least for me, just these old ways of being, seeing what's the goal to take with me and what actually needs to be changed and what am I actually here for, and what we talked about with Kyle, for me, it's freedom and it's connection. I get connections pretty easy for me, whether it's with my family, with my podcast. I love having these conversations. It's really meaningful to me. It's our men's group. I love just being around the guys once a week with no agenda. Whatever's coming up is coming up. We can talk about some heavy shit, or we can talk about some funny conspiracy theories. Like, we talk about it all. And that's a really a deep place of connection for me. And when I find myself in groups where there's not that type of energy, now I'm just like, okay, cool. But it's not my group where I know I'm going to meet and connect with people like you and other brothers where we're just talking about meaningful stuff. And so that's important to me. And whether I go up to Idaho for the summer or when I go play golf in Florida, I'm interested in how to connect, because those two places aren't like our brotherhood in Austin in any way. There's a few people that I don't even know if they could be in our they're not even to the level of understanding and curiosity about personal work, but they're on their journey. I love those relationships because they look at me, who've had a similar upbringing to them in a sense of our careers, but I'm doing something completely different. I'm kind of blending these two worlds of, a traditional financial success pathway and why the fuck am I here? And I'm willing to look at everything that I thought was awesome about me and, change the narrative on that. And so I think in that case, I give those guys the courage to just look a little deeper. I try to meet those guys where they're at, and I try to blow their minds every now and then with some good conspiracies.
You're like the Trojan horse of the golf club.
Dude, totally. I fuck with the guys. It's awesome.
Dropping little breadcrumbs, into the rabbit hole.
Oh yeah.
When we first met, I think I first met you over at your house. This is, we moved here in 21, right? So the COVID thing was like really happening, and Austin was kind of a safe haven for refugees that had lived in more authoritarian states and cities and things like that. And so there was like a very strong sense of community here. I think we were kind of all in a bomb shelter together, right? It's like there was a lot of gatherings, and we would do these workouts at your house, and you have this really beautiful property and amazing home gym. And then people kind of splintered off and siloed into their groups in a normal way, as you would after a crisis, right? Everyone kind of figures out who they vibe with. But it's been interesting getting to know you, because I feel like in the beginning, in those days, you were a bit, maybe it was just because we didn't know each other that well, but I got the sense you were a little bit reserved. And, I didn't really know what you were about. There was like kind of parts of your life that you weren't that open about. And I'm sure, the dynamic of our relationship has just changed. We've spent more time together and gotten closer. You've gone through a lot of changes. I have too. My question is this, though. It's like, when even though you're not a showy, ostentatious kind of person, you're a wealthy guy, right? And I'm sure people around here know that, but you're also not the guy who's like rocking the Rolex and trying to make it about that, right? I think because you've had a lot of experience in that realm, and being successful quite young, like most classy people that have become wealthy, they don't show it because it's just cringe. You just, and if you're around people that are billionaires and you're worth a few million, you realize like, oh, it's even more cringe, right? So the question is this, it's like, I noticed when I was working in Hollywood, for example, there's a great parallel here. I was doing that for 15 years, working with celebrities, right? And it's like, after some time, I realized how cringe it is when people are like transactional and parasitic around a celebrity, whether the celebrity has a lot of money or not. There's like, people seek significance or some sort of benefit from jostling into a closer position with said celebrity, right? There's like this succubus, whether it's conscious or not, where people want access and they want proximity because they want to siphon something from that person. And I always wondered with you, have you had to kind of protect yourself and be mindful of people wanting to grab at you because they know that you've achieved financial success and that you have resources? Is that ever something you run into where you're like having to really check someone's motives or have boundaries or really pace yourself with people because whether conscious or not, they have an ulterior motive that they want or need something from you, and that there's a transactional nature to the way they relate to you?
Oh yeah. No.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. I was on some level like unaware, like exactly what was going on, but there were, particularly in that group, there weren't a lot. We'd have 45 guys come over and work out, but there were certain people in that group that I could tell, yeah, there was something transactional, there was something they thought they could get from me, and so I had, I guess, my guard up a little bit with those guys, but even still, like, I wasn't aware enough where I could just shut it down. So sometimes I would engage them, and maybe even do a little something, and eventually be like, this something doesn't feel right. Now, Peyton was tracking this the whole time.
Of course.
Like, not all these guys are your friends or whatever.
We share something in common of having wives with a lot of discernment.
Oh my gosh.
Like X-ray vision into people. Yeah.
And I really, to be honest, really lacked that. Particularly even in that time in 2020, 2021, even 2022, it took me a while to understand how to set boundaries. And I did a decent job thinking about, okay, I need to come up with some sort of reason can't go to coffee with this person, because I just wasn't super clear. I still didn't know who I was. I was still, unsure of that. And for me, when I was unsure of that, there was still a neediness. There was still a wanting to be liked. I didn't want to come across a particular way. And it really took me until the last 6 months to get a clear sense of that. And nothing became more clear than when I worked with Kyle. But along the way, I started to get better with my boundaries. I started to trust like what I felt with this particular person versus what I was trying to make sense of intellectually. And when I let go of that, that happened about a year ago, actually. I remember in particular was a thing happening that we were involved with, and I was just getting a signal from a couple people. It's like, I don't know what it is. I could probably come up with some reasons, but they're like, I'm good here. I'm not interested in engaging anymore. But to your original question, it was probably happening a lot more than I was aware of. But something was starting to get a bit uneasy. I was feeling a little bit, I was feeling a little bit like people were trying to take advantage of maybe my relationships. And for me, I think my greatest currency is my relationships and the trust that I've built with people, and a lot of people that are, for lack of a better term, like really famous and Hall of Fame athletes, and because I've never asked for anything from them, and I've always, even, in the early days when I really wanted to fanboy some of these guys, I just held it back the best I could. And then over time, I've built really meaningful relationships. And so with that, I've got a sense of when someone's doing that with me. And here's the twist for me, though. I used to be fucking annoyed with that. And now I'm like, I get it. There's something in me that they appreciate, that they like, I'm a little stuck here, and I think Cal may have something here to help me through that. So I try to be really generous. It doesn't mean I'm going to go have coffee with them, but I don't get in the sense that someone's trying to take something from me. Maybe in a few cases I'm like, dude, enough. Like, I'm not engaging. I'm out. But generally, I have love for that person, but I'm not going to go there. I know who I am. I know I'm a good person, a good man, and I'll be honest with you. And so that's been an important part of the whole thing for me, is doing it without judgment, or as little judgment as I can humanly do. Because I do understand where they're at is they're just needing some help, and they don't know the right way to ask it, in a sense.
We all want to feel youthful and look good as we age. That's why everyone and their mom is talking about collagen right now. Well, unfortunately, most collagen products are basically glorified protein powder that don't really deliver on their promise. That's why Carrera Marine Collagen from Peak caught my attention. Unlike the other formulas that focus on just one type of collagen, Carrera combines multiple forms for a synergistic longevity effect that you can see and feel. You've got type 1 marine collagen for skin radiance and smoothness, plus a rare type 2 for deeper joint and connective tissue support. And then they went next level and added biotin and micronized pearl powder to boost skin, hair, and nails. For the past week, I've been whipping 2 scoops into my morning brew, and it turns into a creamy longevity latte without any weird taste or annoying clumping. And I noticed it right away, too. Better skin texture, more hydration, and my joints don't complain like they used to. Now this is legit my #1 favorite protein. There's just nothing like it out there. To get loaded up, here's what you do. Go to peaklife.com/Luke to get 15% off when you subscribe. Plus, get a free gift during their launch period. That's peaklife.com/Luke. peaklife.com/Luke. And their Carrera protein's been clinically shown to support skin elasticity and joint agility after just 2 weeks of use. So you're not just enhancing your appearance, you're investing in your future self. peakt.com/Luke. I've heard about this thing that happens when people retire, that they start to get really depressed and anxious and sort of lack purpose. You hear this a lot with men when they hit retirement age. They retire and they think they're going to be stoked because they have all this freedom. Mm-hmm. And then they find that, they kind of fall into a depression, or they don't know what to do with themselves. And whenever I've heard stories like that, I always think, there's no way like that would ever happen for me. I'm good to retire today, dog. Like, I can think of a lot of fun things I could do that I would enjoy if I didn't have to work, right? So I've managed to find work that, thankfully is meaningful to me. And about which I have enough passion to keep doing it, like the work I'm doing here, if you could even call it work, having a conversation with a friend. But I've always felt like I'd be good to go. Like I can't wait to not have to work. And you've been in a position probably where you haven't had to work in a sense that many of us do. I mean, maybe you have your trading going on and investments and all that stuff that I know nothing about, but it's not like you're going to be broke at the end of the month if you don't go out and generate some revenue through, labor or starting a company. I mean, you've had your podcast for years. You don't even monetize your podcast, Do you feel like, what do you think about that idea? Like if someone doesn't have to work in terms of, just paying for their living expenses, where does that sense of purpose come in? And is that why you do some of these other things like writing your book and having your podcast? Is it a way for you to sort of bake meaning into your life? Because you've already had a career as a trader where that meant everything. And then at some point you were like, wow, the meaning I'm getting out of this is not worth, the sacrifice I have to make to keep it going. So what do you think about just life purpose, meaning, all of that when it's not a necessity for survival?
Yeah. And yes, I think that's a huge thing to explore, because for me, for so long, the purpose was to create wealth and generate more net worth. And that was the kind of program. And I think if I hadn't had what happened in Vegas or something after that woke me up to there's more to life, the financial thing is one game within this whole series of games of life. When a lot of us stop identifying with that being the only game, I think that's a big transition for people. And we see that, yes, we still want to make money. We still want to live the lifestyle we want to live. And maybe I want to create even more wealth. But like right now, I'm in a place where what I've done to make money up until now is affording me the lifestyle of doing my podcast, which is where I get some deep learning from that, right? Obviously spend time with my family, play golf. I like to play golf. I like to be in our men's group. I like to do things, go to events that are really meaningful to me, not just any event that looks kind of interesting. And then having the space to go to Colombia to learn about some different plant medicines, to go to Ecuador, to go anywhere, to travel around, to learn from different lineages. Because the more I've explored that stuff, the more I realize I don't really know anything. And I want to go have these experiences to show me how others have lived for millennia and what is in that for me to learn. And so this is, I mean, if I had all the financial issues solved today, I could see for the next number of years traveling with Peyton, traveling with some friends, doing my podcast. I don't know if I would do another book or anything like, but just like those things that are feeding my curiosity. So I do think for me, it took realizing that I had put myself in a pickle with the finances, something that was like my superpower for a while, and it no longer was. And it's allowed me to hopefully put that game in its proper position in the kind of hierarchy of my life. And it's important, but it has way much less of an impact, although right now it has a significant impact. But when that is in the right place, it's just a part of the whole thing. And that's, at least that's my assertion. That's what I feel like will happen when things could, as they continue to unwind and I get to that place where this is the life that I want to live like right now. And it feels really meaningful, purposeful, getting involved with different initiatives that are just really important to me and my growth, my learning, and supporting others who are doing just great work in helping people get to know themselves better.
It sounds like when you were younger that you're, I'm going to put this on you. You tell me how much of it's true.
Yeah, bring it.
Because I'm sure many people can relate, myself included. It's like when we lack self-worth, some of us think we can find it in net worth, right? It's like
hell yeah.
chasing that. I'll be worthy when, I'll be worthy if. And what a gift I think it is in your life that you've been able to find that, you took that as far as you could take it, right? And then found there was still something lacking. I'm in Chicago, I'm a trader, I got to get the fuck out of here. This isn't what I'm meant to do, right? And it's like, seems like your journey has been a lot about really finding out who you are and deriving your self-worth from within. And it seems like it would probably serve many of us to really out of the gate, and we're just not taught this, to focus on the self-worth. And it seems like the net worth and the abundance and the opportunities are more likely to be born out of that and probably be more in alignment with our highest goals rather than more superficial material goals, right? It's like if I'm really focused on self-worth, learning who I am, I'm going to feel more deserving of abundance and be able to manifest things that actually serve my higher purpose rather than putting the cart before the horse, right? It's like we're sort of indoctrinated into this idea of success and where we're going to find significance and ultimately self-acceptance and self-love is from out there somewhere. So that's something that I've observed. Also, what do you think about this idea? It's like, I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier, where this idea that the sense that I'm still struggling and chasing, even though like I continue to be more successful in all areas of life. And it's like, it seems that if one can't be in full gratitude, acceptance, and satisfaction with where you are right now in your life. So say, I have the home I have, the marriage I have, the car, whatever, right? Material friendships. If I can't live in full gratitude and satisfaction in what I have now, you could give me $100 million right now. And then I'm like, cool, now I get a house in Costa Rica and I do this and that, or whatever I would do with that, right? If I'm unable to be satisfied and really grateful and embodied in the life that I have now, you could put me in a different echelon of life and I'll still be the same unsatisfied, ungrateful, fearful, craving, wanting, whatever shit I'm experiencing right now. In other words, it doesn't matter how many levels you go up, you're still going to be met with that, it's not enough, I don't have enough, or I'm not enough. And so it makes sense to me that that would be the best primary goal, is to feel that sense of accomplishment and worth and whatever it is that I'm looking for, security, to find that at whatever level I am, so that as the externals start to evolve and expand, I'm not dependent on that to feel okay, right? It's again, it's like it's the getting the priorities like ass backwards kind of thing. What do you think about all of that?
I think that's spot on. I think so many of us are in that first camp, and we chase this net worth thing, and it's great too to do that. And then get honest, wherever you are in your life, like, is it actually delivering on what I thought it would when I was told this? And to your point, until that gets sorted out, 3 years ago, I could have been given 100 million and I would have found myself in this situation. It would have taken a little bit of time, but because I didn't have a proper relationship with what net worth was actually going to do for me, I had this other idea that it was going to bring me all these other things. Yeah, that pattern needs to change. And I think for most of us, it's when we're fucking faced with something that we didn't want to face, that we didn't think was going to happen 3 years ago, and yet it did. And it comes down to net worth replacing, to your point, self-worth. And if we can get honest about that, it's obviously complicated, right? There's a lot of different ways, different protocols, whether it's through plant medicine or through kind of other work. But to me, that's the work. It comes back to, who am I? And when we are sitting in a place where we're thinking that we are broken, I've been there for a while, in many years where I thought there was something to fix, and that was my orientation. I'm going to do this to fix this. And finally, I realized that there's no end to the fixing. And so what do I actually want to do? I just want to get to know myself better. There's nothing to fix. There's things to clarify. And in that kind of inquiry, I started to uncover these patterns. And again, I brought them up a number of times, but the work with Kyle and that conversation that he and I had for 10 hours, so much of this was uncovered. So much, and it made so much sense, and he was so impeccable with holding that space that I never felt like that about these things. And I had explored them before with different people and different ways. But the way Kyle did it, I actually didn't feel like I needed the body work. I was so clear after that conversation. And then the body work, sinks it all into the whole organism.
For those listening, you can find a link to this Kyle Coursey, to which we're referring at lukestory.com/Cal. That'll be the show notes for today. And I republished our conversation on your podcast, The Great Unlearn. So that'll be in the feed a couple weeks ago. And then Kyle will be joining me, I think this week. So it'll probably come out after this conversation. So
Awesome.
For those that are like, what's this Kyle thing you keep referring
to? Guy Kyle.
Yeah. I mean, life-changing experience, to say the least.
Yeah. So, and you and I have done similar things, different things. We're all kind of orienting. You and I certainly are orienting around the same things. And it was so interesting to hear you talk after your work with Kyle. And then I hadn't sat with him yet. And then I sat with him, and then we talked, and it was just like, holy shit. So much of it was so relevant with what you experienced and I experienced. But it's just, for me in this process, it's been about like, how much grace can I give myself? Not let me off the hook, but how much grace can I give myself so that I can think clearly about what wants to be addressed for me? And instead of getting like super pissed at myself, I'll just laugh like, dude, how the fuck did you end up here? And it's where I'm at. And it's not terrible, but it's not something I would have signed up for, but it has been amazing for me to get super clear on what's really important to me. But yeah, I think you're spot on where I think a lot of us are taught this idea to build wealth and you're good. I even say it in the book. Like, someone told me that if you made a certain amount of money, it's still not going to make you happy. I was like, fuck that. And I was happy for a long time, but it wasn't necessarily because of, it's not the sustainable happiness. It's the feeling the abundance of finances, but there wasn't a tremendous amount of abundance that I was carrying otherwise, I would say.
One thing my dad used to tell me, I don't know, he must have been maybe in his 60s or so. He did well for himself relative to where he came from. Was involved in some real estate and stuff like that. So he did well, and he had a good sense. He had a good entrepreneurial sense, but he loathed debt. So he's never in debt. Like any properties, he just buy the property outright. So he used to really get on me about being in debt so often, which has been a pattern of mine throughout my life. But anyway, at one point, he had like ATVs and horses, and he had a couple trucks and guns and just material stuff that he had accumulated. And when he was, I guess probably in his mid-60s, I'd go visit him, and every time I'd visit him, I'd be, well, where's the ATVs? Oh, I sold them. It's a pain in the ass. Then he got rid of the horses, and he just started downsizing to a more minimalist lifestyle. And, he was always someone I looked to as, sort of a North Star. Like, dude figured it out. He got it down to the point where, he could live on passive income from his properties and things like that and didn't like have to work. But I noticed he started really paring down. And the way he explained it to me was, he'd worked his whole life in a similar way that you did earlier in life. You're fortunate that you figured out that, making money isn't the answer to happiness early on. It took him much longer. And, he had a lot of unresolved trauma and just issues around self-worth, and was, like many of us, kind of indoctrinated into the idea that if you're financially successful, you'll be happy, right? So he went through that and wasn't happy. But when he started getting rid of stuff, he said, Luke, you have no idea what a burden material ownership is. There'll come a point in your life, you work so hard to get this and you start collecting stuff, right? And then eventually that stuff starts to bury you, even if it's just the accounting and insurance and all the administrative work that props up your little empire of whatever size, right? It's like things just get so complicated and complex that it ends up kind of being a prison in a sense. You become beholden to all of this stuff that you've accumulated. And I'll never forget that. It was really interesting, because I'd look at him and be like, man, I'd like to have a couple ATVs and a couple houses in different places. And he'd always tell me, just rent. I'd be, oh, Dad, I want to get a property in Montana so I can go there in the summer. He goes, are you crazy? You know what a pain in the ass that is? Just go rent somewhere, things like that. And I was like, what? That doesn't sound like very good advice. So a lot of the advice that he would give me around this stuff has taken time to really land. And I start to see like, oh, yeah, it is. It's kind of a pain in the ass. You think about some of these really wealthy guys that collect cars and stuff, right? They have this airplane hangar full of these old classic cars. I'm like, you got to have registration and insurance and all kinds of shit. You got to have a mechanic come and start them up. It's like everything that you accumulate requires maintenance. It doesn't just sit there and then when you want to use it, it's there. It's like there's a paper trail associated with everything. And it seems to me at this point in my life, I'm more interested in simplicity, although the freedom that, resources allow. It seems like if you let things get too complex, that could become a burden. So what's your current view on stuff?
Oh my God.
The accumulation of stuff, like you have a few properties and, just the whole thing, you have different loans, and just owning this house, dude, is such a pain in the ass. We had a plumber over here today. Something's always broken. It's like, oh, $400 here, $2,000 here. It's like, my dad used to also tell me, he goes, it's dumb to rent your home long-term, especially in LA because it's so expensive. He goes, yeah, you want to own a home. But he goes, just trust me, it's going to end up costing you way more to own a home. I was like, what? You're crazy. And now I see, our pool died. It's like $100,000 to fix the pool. It's like, okay, well, we got a mosquito swamp for a while. Is what it is, So what do you think about, this? Again, it's like that kind of trying to fill something inside externally, and then that ultimately ends up causing more of a burden of responsibility and anxiety because you have all these moving parts you have to keep track of.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with him more. I mean, yes, that right there for me, and that's the word I've used, is I've created this prison for myself. The beauty is I have the key. Now, unfortunately, I can't use it right now, but I've been doing things over the past couple of years to walk out of that prison. And part of this accumulation, it'd be nice to have the ATVs and to have a house. And there's for me, it's like the ego is like, oh, I can buy that. Like, let's do this. This is a good deal. Like the place we got in Spice, we got it at a great price. We'll see when I want to sell it if it was a great price. It was a great price to where it was listed to, the home's ridiculous, but it's a great price when I find out what I can sell it for on some level. And I've loved that house. We've had it for almost 4 years now, and we've had a lot of amazing men's groups there and cool events. It's where I have the podcast. I love it. And it doesn't really generate any income, and it's expensive, and. So this is a perfect example, of what your dad's talking about. Like 4 years ago was a different situation. Now things aren't moving quite like I had planned, and So what's on the chopping block? Like, how, as much as I love that place, is it really serving me when I'm having some stress around finances? And that your dad would say, fuck no, it's not. He'd have a real honest conversation with me. He's like, let's sit down and look at what you got. And I could probably identify where he'd say, keep that, maybe keep that, and then the rest of it. And those are the conversations I'm trying to have with myself, and reflecting with others that can hold that too, and understand just what you're talking about. These things, some of them are benefiting, maybe many of them aren't. And so what are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? And how can I do it like in a good way where I don't just burn it down to the ground, but there's a methodical way. And it's, I mean, we can say what we want, but I think for so many of us on that, as we're growing wealth and we're living below our means and we're acquiring these things, and we make all the reasons why it's a good buy, and there's a part of it. It could be a really big part. It could be a small part, but there's an ego play in there for sure that I've been tracking in myself and trying to get honest about what is the worth of this in my life, and is it adding benefit or is it taking away or adding to stress? And so I'm in that kind of deep questioning right now. But your dad is spot on, and I don't know if it's like an age thing where we hit a certain age, or we find ourselves, I don't know, maybe your dad found himself in a bit of like a financial, like things weren't quite working, and then he had to get honest with himself about that. I don't know if that's how it happens for people. It seems to be how it happened for me. And if you're not there yet, get curious about it, because when you're there, you're not going to want to be there. It's going to be painful.
Well, it's interesting because I think on both sides of the spectrum, if if that relationship with oneself is not really solid and healthy, where you can just feel satisfied and fulfilled within your own experience of life, regardless of your title, what you've accomplished, what you have, don't have. Seems like if that isn't there, that you could be someone who is really struggling financially, owns nothing, has tons of debt, and you'll think, oh, if I could just get to this certain level of, like net worth or income, that my problems would be solved. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who have achieved everything in the material realm and are feeling trapped in a similar way and thinking, if I could just get rid of all this shit and have a more simple life, I'd be happy, right? It's like somewhere in the middle there is finding happiness and fulfillment within whatever situation you find yourself in, right? Because I've been there most of my life of just struggling, no money, broke, getting, my overdraft fees in the bank and credit card debt, and I'm just all that shit, living in my car. I mean, just so much of my life was spent like, God, if I just had more money, then I would be okay, right? And still feel that a little bit sometimes, as I was saying, but where I am in my life now is more like, I would actually like to simplify things and just get rid of clutter and responsibility that's associated with some of the things that I would attribute to success, right? Like we went and bought a couple bicycles last year, and I got like these really nice beach cruisers, they were like, I don't know, $1,200 each or something, right? Like real nice bikes. I haven't had a bike since 1982. You know what I mean? That's my little BMX bike. Got these bikes, and we live in hill country. I didn't know that these beach cruisers suck living in hill country, right? So we never ride the bikes because you get so gassed every time you got to go up a little hill, And so now we're sitting with those things, and they're cluttering up the garage now, right? Where at the time it sounded like a good idea, and now I'm just like, God, I'd rather have that money back and not have those things sitting in the garage collecting dust. And there's a lot of stuff like that in my material kind of life where I feel like it's like it leaks my energy. It's like clutter. So I'm feeling more drawn to, wow, how can I simplify my life and pare things down? And I feel like, man, the idea of just living in a cabin with nothing sounds really good, which is where it came from, So it's like, maybe it's not what's going on out there. It's like there's something out of balance within that is calling for my attention. If I feel like trapped by all of the shit in my life that I've accumulated, it's the same kind of feeling as when I had accumulated nothing and was in a deficit, right? It's like the reality seems to be that it's not really about the external at all. It's like, wow, how can I feel comfortable within? And sometimes that does require changing things on the external, right? If you're in a career relationship that's not serving you, obviously things need to change. But I'm really interested in what life looks like when it becomes more simple and there's just less loose ends and responsibilities and things to have to take care of. So I think I'm reaching like sell the ATVs phase in life, like my dad did a bit earlier than he did. It's just like, wow, how can things just be a little more simple? Like less emails, less paperwork, less legal shit, administrative shit. How can I just kind of simplify things where it's comfortable and not overwhelming? All right, you guys, I don't love the term biohacker, but let's say I've been in the health optimization game for a minute. I'm basically obsessed with solutions to what ails us. So supplements, cold plunges, red light, all the things, right? But if you're not managing the energetic field in which you live, even the best inputs like those don't land the way you think they do. Because unfortunately, these days our bodies are constantly interacting with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell towers, an invisible load your nervous system has to process 24/7. This is why you can be doing everything right and still feel a little off. And that's exactly what got me into Lila Quantum Tech. It's a suite of products designed to support your biofield and help your body stay resilient to EMF stress. At home, I use their quantum block to harmonize the environment here in my office studio and support a more coherent signal all around me. Then when I leave the compound here, I wear the Heal 360 capsule. It's got quantum charged titanium spheres inside it, so it helps take the edge off that constant background noise when I'm out in the world. And when the exposure peaks, times like air travel, traffic, and so on, they've got EMF blocking clothing that blocks against 99% of measurable wireless radiation. This line of clothing is clutch when you're walking into a high EMF environment. To get yourself dialed in with all that stuff, here's what you do. Go to lukestory.com/LilaQ and use the code Luke10 for 10% off your first order. That's lukestory.com/LEELAQ. Because the real upgrade isn't doing tons more supplements and saunas and all the things. It's about protecting the field in which you live and thrive. Again, that link is lukestory.com/LilaQ and the code is Luke10.
Well, I love that you brought up the case of the bikes, because I had a similar situation where I had a float tank in my garage.
I remember when you were selling it.
Yeah, I know. I hit you up a couple different times.
I was like, man, I
I
didn't have the cash at the time, but I would have liked it. It probably would have been in my garage if I bought it from you, and it'd be one of those things right now where I'm like, I haven't used it in 6 months. Like, do I really need this thing?
Exactly. And so I bought it. This is a great one. Bought it used. I bought it for like 19 grand, which is a great deal for one of these float tanks. I used it a few times. And then, I don't know, a year and a half later, I'm like, I need to sell this thing. Because every time I go in the garage, I fucking see this thing. And it reminds me.
Well, it's a great example because you got to buy the salt. You get out of it. It gets salt water everywhere. You got to have someone clean it. It's like one of those great examples of a thing that many people would like to have, because it's kind of a luxury item, right? But then it's got a lot of maintenance involved with it. So it's like, is the maintenance and the pain in the ass of taking care of it and making space for it worth the benefits that you get whenever you use it?
And the answer is no. Much like renting, just go visit a float tank. For me, it was like, okay. But I ended up having to sell it for $5 grand. And I was lucky to do that. No one fucking wanted them.
That's funny.
And I'm like, I probably would have given it away for free if he just would have taken it out of my garage, because I couldn't look at it anymore. And so the reason I bring this up is there's a process I went through December, January, where I went through my closet and I just got rid of fucking so much stuff. Just stuff. Clothes I hadn't worn in a while. I probably got rid of 2/3 of like my clothes, over half of my sneakers. I had a lot of cool Nikes or whatever. I'm like, I'm never going to fucking wear them. So I put them all in a big pile for my 2 boys and their friends. And they took almost all of it, which was so cool. I'm like, okay, look at some fucking style here. These kids want to wear it. But it gave me more space. And after I did the closet, I went into the garage and I got rid of a bunch of, I just started to clean out anything that was no longer serving me. I did it with my Instagram, to be honest with you. Over the years, I was following like maybe 1,800 people. And I was like, I just want to clean up the feed. And I went through and I just started to unfollow like the easy, a bunch were pretty easy. And after a while, my goal was to get to like 300 followers. I need a lot of friends. And so I gotta, you gotta stay with your friends. But there are people that I'm friendly with, but I'm like, their content doesn't resonate, or it's like about biohacking. And at that point, I'm like, if I need any tips on biohacking, I've got my guys. So I don't need reminders. Like for me, it's almost like I'm good. Like I don't need anything telling me that I'm not good, because that's a slippery slope. But there's a lot that I got rid of. And so it was all this like cleaning. I just felt lighter. And so I get curious about, for you, what that process could look like for you in a very like material way. And I know you came to the men's group and gave us a bunch of your old cool gear. Great. Like that's a version of that where it really, my office, I got rid of, just everywhere. And I felt so good. And that's just been part of this purging process for me. Yeah, that's stuff around the house, easier to get rid of. Some stuff you can sell, some stuff you just got to give away and be like, okay, don't make that purchase again. But a lot of it is just another energetic way of like, okay, what's no longer serving me? And that's been a cool process, because just as like I was going through, I probably went through 6 or 7 waves of the unfollowing. So people I love, and I'm like, this content's not for me right now. It's not what I want. I want some fucking funny shit. I want a few little conspiracy guys that I think are really well-grounded, some sports stuff, friends. But like when I go on there, I want to have a pretty good time. And it's been helpful for me. And I highly recommend, like, one of the things my buddy, before I went into my closet, he's like, okay, try this as an idea. Go through all your clothes, and would you buy them today? Would you buy this pair of pants, this shirt, this jacket, today? And there's going to be some things you wouldn't necessarily buy, but they're legacy pieces, are expensive. You may want to keep on, but so much of it, dude, was like, didn't need it. Don't miss any of it. Again, I gave away over half my cool sneakers. My kids wear them. Their buddies wear them. It's so cool. Watch it. Like, they're being worn. They're going to stay in my closet because I have like a rotation, like 3 or 4 that I really like at a time. And when I'm done with those, I generally just buy like a couple more pairs. And I don't often go back to my old pairs of sneakers. So I think for you, finding those things in your life, like the bikes, that are signals. I'm like, dude, what the fuck were you thinking? Or whatever the signal is, right? And then just kind of give yourself some grace.
Decluttering, man, making space. Maybe, it's a spring thing, right? Spring cleaning is a thing. I think that's why this is top of mind. I've just been feeling the encroachment, whether it's my desktop or unanswered emails, just like a lot of distractions in the periphery that I feel are kind of draining my focus.
They're just there.
Yeah, there's like subconscious sort of leaks of energy, even if you're not thinking about it. I just know, like in my office right now, because I've been working on this book for so long, it looks very tidy because I really don't like clutter in my space. If you walk in my office, you'd be like, damn, for a guy's office, it's very clean and tidy, right? But if you open up any of the drawers, it's just like packed with shit. Just, a collection, like a storage bin of USB cables from the past 20 years, you know what I mean? And when we moved in, everything was very organized. I'm into my label maker, right? I'm like big on the labeling, everything's organized. But then as time goes by, that just like you just start breaching the confines of wherever stuff is stored. And so it's like when I go in my office, I notice it's much harder to focus because there's a part of me that knows there's a shit storm in every single little cabinet, right? It's weird how things like that, and maybe I'm just more sensitive to it than some people, but I think whether it's on the micro of like, oh, I need to organize my pens and like office supplies, to I need to clean my garage, to I need to sell this car or whatever, right? Or a property or something like that. It's like there's a lot of value in the decluttering, whether it's digital, physical, relationships, your Instagram feed. I think it's a great topic to bring into this spring season that we're in right now.
Dude, even your cables, I did that. I mean, I'm kind of the collector for the family, so I had so many different ones, and I finally just put them all out. I took the best ones that we had, because we had a bunch of shitty ones, right? Because you don't know what to do, and you just throw them in the bin. Took the best ones, and kind of had what I would need, and then presented the rest of the family, and all these others I just threw away because I don't need them, so I had a couple backups, but that's a great place to start. If you need to procrastinate and you just need to feel a little more settled, it's kind of nice because it's just always there. And so there are other areas. We've done it with our freaking pantry. Can't imagine how many supplements you have, but I went through and I threw out so many supplements, so many, and you're gifted so many. So you have I can't imagine how many you have. But even me, I bought a lot of mine. I'm like, fuck it. Hopefully it's expired because it's easier to throw away. But otherwise, I'm like, I'm just chucking it. I would leave some for my kids if they want them and their buddies want them. But other than that, I'm like, we're just done. I'm not using any of these things. And so that's just cleaned up. It just cleans up your space, and it just. We know going into a room that's clean and settled feels really good. So I think this is an important part of the process of doing it even on the micro level versus these big ideas of what we're trying to declutter.
Yeah. My method is take some modafinil, turn the phone off, just go to town. Just takes the starting point. Like I have to put it on the calendar. Okay, Saturday I'm committed to, creating space. One thing I want to cover before we wrap up, which I love, it's one of those things where I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have thought of that. Your brand is Unlearn, right? Your book here, Unlearn, you got your t-shirt on, your podcast, The Great Unlearn. Since I met you, I've always loved that as just sort of a brand identity, because in my life, I think there's probably an even split between learning new valuable information about life and the way things work and letting go of old ideas that no longer serve me, or just things I latched onto or was conditioned to believe. And I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this, but a principle that I've really applied a lot for a very long time is open-mindedness, right? That's one of the principles from the 12 steps that is, without that, you're a goner. Like you got to have that. Otherwise there's no chance you're ever going to get sober in my case, right? So you got to open your mind to new ideas. And I had a teacher many years ago who really, really hammered in the open mind principle in me by showing me every time my mind was closed. And he would just rail on me because he'd be trying to teach me something because I asked him to, right? It was very consensual. I'm like, hey, I'm really struggling with XYZ. He'd start to share some wisdom with me based on his experience and go, oh, yeah, I know. And he'd go, your mind's closed. He would just scream at me, right? And I'm like, and then I'd say, no, but I'm agreeing with you. Go, see, you're arguing again. I was like, it was just driving me crazy. Eventually started to break through, and what he was teaching me in a pretty aggressive way, because that's what I needed at the time, was that the open mind is not only about letting new information in, but equally as important is letting old information out. And it kind of goes into, it's a nice little dovetail from cluttering, right? So if I got a house and a garage full of all this shit and it's like feeling overwhelming, bringing more stuff in is not going to fix that, right? It's like I have to make space for that. And so that's how he would kind of frame open-mindedness to me, was you have to be willing constantly to surrender old ideas, no matter how much you believe them to be true at a time, right? And that kind of makes space for new ideas that are going to help you expand and grow. And so I love your, your platform of like unlearn. You didn't call your platform like learn more,
Right.
get smarter, take in more information. It's a process of subtraction, which is really my spiritual path has been mostly that. It's like surrendering, letting go of what is not true and real. And what's left in its absence is what is actually true and useful, So tell me like how you kind of came into this way of thinking of just, deprogramming yourself, unlearning things that, may have served you for a time and no longer do.
I'm not sure where I first heard the term. And in fact, my podcast in the beginning was called Working In. That was like, when I finally published it, it was the Great Unlearn, but the working title was Working In, because so much of what I was learning and was really helping me was these practices, meditation, just recovery around working out, just these things to re-energize the system. A lot of Paul Chek's work that was pretty influential, but he didn't quite capture the stuff that I was after. And I had sent my buddy Kevin, who's Greg's brother, Kevin Booth, who just done all my branding and stuff. I had sent him like a list of 15, 20 terms. And I'm like, dude, what do you have for this? And Unlearn was in there. And he came back with the Great Unlearn. And I'm like, wow. I mean, that's fucking, yes, that's it. And what's interesting is I don't know what was first, the chicken or the egg, but with that signal that I put out, the Great Unlearn, and here to undo the programming, to be aware of the program, bring people on who are doing it differently, to have your own experience, curiosity, all these things that weren't necessarily part of my, this open-mindedness. I wouldn't say I was super open-minded. I was about some things, but I was also very black and white. When I started to understand that curiosity was a real superpower as the podcast was taking off, it did allow me, to your point, it's like in order for us to learn new things, we do need to understand what it is we believe and why. And then, as Don Miguel Ruiz says, we can undo that agreement. And then we can come through with maybe another agreement of something that we have a direct experience with. Because in my experience, so much of what I believed or thought to be true was not based on any of my own experience. It was what I was taught in school, so on and so forth, public media. But as I started to see that these things weren't true, and I was learning what may be closer to true for me, and I was having all these experiences, I started to come up with this whole new idea about who I am in this space and what does it mean. And that whole concept, it was, it's funny, that I didn't start praying until like, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. I remember that day, whatever event we were at.
With Marianne Williamson.
Yeah. And Alice and I got home and we were like, can you believe Cal just started praying? I remember thinking, dude, how have you not offed yourself?
Yeah.
Because that's been my experience, I mean, and I forget sometimes too, but it's just funny that you had already been on your journey that long and it was like this revelatory thing for you. And I was like, how's this guy been walking around without that support?
And so what's interesting is the prayer came in a different form for me. It was the podcast. And it was like the weekly thing of, this is my prayer. Bringing people on, talking about these things, who I was surrounding myself with. So it wasn't maybe a traditional prayer, but it definitely set me on this road of really questioning everything and being as open-minded as I could be to other people's ideas that made sense to me. Not necessarily even intellectually, but it's just like I heard it. I'm like, that actually lands for me. Let me investigate a little bit further. And I think that's been kind of my greatest gift in this, past 6, 7, 8 years is being curious, realizing that I really don't know that much. I know what I've experienced. Even that changes. And so I try to come in as much as I can with a beginner's mind. And it's hard sometimes because I have my biases for sure. And I'm not afraid to speak those, but I try to stay open. And yeah, in a lot of ways, I got really lucky with the brand, to be honest with you, because I love the t-shirt. I love that I was able to call my book that. It all kind of lines up, and people have an idea about what it is, and if they don't, it sparks something in them like, well, what is this about? Maybe they'll listen to the podcast and they'll see like the things that are explored there, and I think a lot of them are really useful, and they're outside generally of what we've been told.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that are more intellectually driven find the idea of open-mindedness threatening because they perceive it as some sort of vulnerability, like, oh, I'm just going to fall for anything. In my experience, I found the opposite to be true. The more open-minded I am, the more it allows for my intuition and discernment and kind of gut feeling. What you describe is like, if I get my mind out of the equation of like, don't like, want, don't want, it's like that creates this space for me to experience how something makes me feel, right? Being around someone, hearing an idea, seeing a social media post, it's like, because there's less rigid position, like I'm not stuck to a belief system so much. It's like, I can explore this without having to intellectualize it. And then over time, I learn how to trust the feeling that I have in my body. It's like, how is my nervous system responding to this? And I've found that that is a much more reliable barometer of truth. It's a better lie detector than thinking about something and trying to figure it out using the mind. Because the mind is like stuck with all these other influences from past experiences. Or if I can just approach something fresh with an open mind, I'm actually less vulnerable to being subject to coercion or manipulation or being taken advantage of than if I had to use the mind. So you can just feel it, just like, how do I feel around this person? Or how do I feel when I am exposed to a different, a book or a piece of content or something like that? It's like, where does it land? It's a very counterintuitive way to operate in the world. Yeah, I've learned a lot of it from Allison. She's not like she's not someone that's like trapped in the mind and has really rigid ideas. She's very open like I am, but I've observed her capacity for intuition and how accurate her intuition is. And it's based on more what I'm describing and what I'm, learning over the years to do is just like, let me just feel into it instead of ruminating on it and driving myself crazy trying to arrive at a decision. It's an interesting thing that it really is counterintuitive. You think like, oh no, I have to have my set, rule book that I have to follow. It's like sometimes the biggest, kind of the most potent way I'm able to make decisions is just staying in my heart and just waiting for that subtle sense of go, don't go, turn left, turn right. It's a much more fun and interesting way to live too.
Yeah, I definitely, for a long time was in the head in that way, and would definitely be influenced by someone who's really charismatic or someone who just was really well put together. And I was just listening with trying to sort it all. This guy's fucking smart. It must be true, or some shit like that, right? And yeah, it's taken me quite a while, although I feel like I'm there now, where I can just listen with my body, and it makes things so much more clear. Now, one of the benefits, I've part of my human design, and I don't know it that well, but I remember in a reading, my guy told me that I have a really open head center. So it's like, so you're really like inherently open-minded. But when you put that together with how we're brought up, schooling, there's a right answer, there's a wrong answer. You know, I was a good rule follower in that regard. I was like pretty good at school. And so I had lived so much of my life thinking there's a right and a wrong, there's two political parties, there's, you know, whatever it is, yeah, all that bullshit. And could get sucked into having to hold a position that I got convinced was right, but didn't really believe it. And now it's just like when I let go of all that, when I realized like a response can be, I don't know. When I really settled in to be able to say that, everything got so much easier. Like, I'm not trying to bullshit some answer.
Right.
I'm going to let you know kind of what I know about it, work it out. And I'll even let you know if I don't know it that well, but this is my understanding. Almost a little bit. And sometimes it's like, I don't really know. Sometimes I can get like that, but I don't want anyone to really think they got me figured out on what I think, because I don't really know, but I know what I'm open to in the moment and what makes sense. There are some hills I may die on, but most of them, I'm like, I'm still working it out, but I have a pretty good idea. And what you're sharing is like not at all the truth. You got to do your own research. But what I've heard, it's actually quite the opposite of that. So, but there is my own orientation is to be open-minded. And now I think it's in a place where I can just listen, and I don't need to, it doesn't need to create a response from me. That was the other part back in the day. I was like, oh, I gotta respond. No, sometimes this shit needs to be left there. I don't need to show how smart I am. I'm kind of over that. So it's been, yeah, I don't know, comforting is not the right word, but it's really opened up more space for me to just be present in conversation, because I'm not working out like what my angle is and what. Just want to be like, let's throw it in. And if you're agreeable and I am, we can play around. And if you're not so agreeable, I don't know where it'll go, but it probably won't last that long. You know, just move on.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but I spent a lot of my life stuck in survival mode. Years of trauma, addiction, and general chaos left my nervous system never truly feeling safe. And even after I got my act together, there was still part of me that always felt on guard and bracing for impact. And that's why I connected so deeply with Lotus Way. Lotus Way makes these solar infusions that carry the energetic imprint of specific flowers, all designed to support your nervous system in a subtle but really powerful way. I started using their flower essences during a big life transition, and they've definitely helped me stay grounded, open, and less reactive. And now Lotus Way has created something special called Warriors of the Unseen Truth. It's a program for veterans, first responders, and anyone still carrying the invisible burden of trauma. Now, even if that's not you, you probably know someone who's still trying to find their way back to themselves. To help them or yourself out, visit lukestory.com/warriors to learn more, and use the code Luke to save 10% off your first order. So whether it came from combat, childhood, or just the drama of modern life, a lot of us are carrying a weight our bodies never learned to put down. And Lotus Way offers beautiful tools to help you find your way back to center. Check it out at lukestory.com/warriors. Code Luke will save you that 10%. I find being in a state of wonder is a lot more interesting than being in a state of knowing. You know, there's so much freedom in that. And then there are things that there's natural laws that are dependable. You know, there's a few things that are just like core principles that I think, like open-mindedness itself, I'm not really movable on those things because they've just proven themselves to be true over and over and over again throughout my entire life. But in terms of thinking I know what's going on out there in the world, it's like, I don't know, why are there chemtrails? What's up with the Antarctic Treaty? Like all of these kind of mysteries about the earthly human experience. Sometimes it's like just being in a state of wonder is much more interesting and comforting than latching on to a particular position, to have malleable perception and realize like so much of my life is created by the way that I'm framing something or holding it. That's why I like people that help me break out of that, even though it's uncomfortable sometimes. I had a session with one of our recent guests, Brandy Gilmore, the other day. She has an incredible story. She was injured and, just in a really bad way, kind of, I think she was partially paralyzed. She was just tweaked. And she started, long story short, figured out how she could use her mind and perception to heal her body. So I had a session with her because I wanted to try to figure out this tinnitus thing. And she's really tapped in and very intuitive, like psychic kind of vibes. And so we're on this Zoom call and she's like, out of the blue, what's your relationship with the police like in your area, in your area? I was like, I hate them. These speed traps, these bastards, these Tar River pirates, as I like to call them. They're just out there trying to extort and exploit and steal my money. They're just bastards. And so we went through this whole exercise, and I believe that, right? That's like a belief that I'm holding, but because of unlearning, right, and open-mindedness, I'm willing to entertain where she wants to go with this. And she starts helping me reframe by asking me questions like, well, if somebody, broke into your house in the middle of the night, how would you handle that? I'd be like, I'd call the cops. Those cops you hate? I was like, well, yeah, but then I need them. Anyway, you get the point, right? She starts like kind of putting me in corners in a way, but I'm game for it. I asked her for help and my mind's open. And so I start to see like, oh, wow. So what if the money that they need to keep their outfit going over here comes from these tickets that I view as like extortion and robbery. And it's really hard for me to let go of that belief, by the way. But say they just stopped funding from writing people tickets for going 2 miles over the speed limit here in our little suburb town, and they just went away, then someone breaks into my house, well, who am I going to call? You know what I mean? It's this kind of thing, right? She went through just all these different scenarios with that. And by the end of it, I wouldn't say that I was totally changed in my perception, but it did start to shift where I think what she said is like, what if they were your friends? Like, what if when you drive by them, you don't feel this resentment or this fear? You were just like, hey, buddy, wow, thanks for doing such a great job and just being here for the community, right? It was like a difficult reframing for me, but it showed me how, as open-minded as I think I am, I'm still stuck in this particular position because there's something I'm getting out of that. There's some juice that I get out of like this adversarial imaginary relationship that I have with them, feeling like a victim or whatever it is, right? It doesn't even really matter. It's just more about how can I widen the aperture and just flip things around and look at it from a different area so I can drive around and not have those negative feelings inside, regardless of what the, objective truth of their whole operation is, right? Which I still think is kind of nefarious, but can I find an acceptance of that and look at it in a way that doesn't drain my energy or cause me to feel badly about the world I live in, right? So that was a great example of that, of like kind of really pulling my covers as someone who think, oh yeah, I'm super open-minded. I can change my mind about anything. It's like you start talking to me about the government and all of their various institutions. I see, wow, my mind is still really closed. I have a preconceived idea about this system and the way it's set up. And I think it's wrong. I fight against it. I resist it. It's like, I'm not hurting them. I'm just hurting myself by holding it in that way. So interesting.
Well, it reminds me of Byron Katie's work.
100%. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. God damn it, they're extorting me. Is that really true? Yeah. Who would you be if you didn't believe that to be true? It's like, well, I'd be happy. I'd feel free. I would feel friendly with that. It's like, well, why? The only thing separating you from that is what you believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Byron Katie's amazing. I had her on my podcast years ago.
Yes, I know. I remember seeing that.
It was so cool. It was like having a one-on-one with her. But I mean, that's I'm glad you brought her up because that really is radical open-mindedness, like non-dual, no opposites way of experiencing the world.
Yeah, and it comes down to like when these things come into, these awarenesses come into our life, it's like, okay, how is that belief serving me? And it's like, fucking clearly it's not. I mean, there are some ways that I subconsciously, maybe it is, but ultimately, how would you feel, right? If you didn't have that thought, like driving around and like that. And that is obviously deeper work to go through her worksheets, but that's how these things change. And that's the honesty that you're calling in, that I'm calling in, that you had on this call, that reminds us and reminds me it's funny. I had a clip. Sutcliffe was just on the podcast, and his clip that came out today was just about that. Right?
Oh, really?
Jared will know this, but it's, we're never going to uncover all the blind spots. So don't think you're going to, but it's pretty cool to be on that kind of search of like, what am I not seeing? Clearly, it's like you'd feel better driving around if you saw these different police officers and you're just like, fucking hey, all right, you guys got my back, because that one in particular, as an example, maybe he really does. Maybe he's in there for the purest of intentions, and he's in a system that maybe doesn't. That's not the DNA of the system, but even in that case, because you don't know his intentions one way or the other, you're choosing to believe one particular way.
Yeah.
And I had used this example with one of my kids. He was dating a girl, and they were, it looked like they were going to break up. They were going different places after high school. She happened to be really close with my daughter. So my son's younger sister was friends. Long story short, they had spent a lot of time together, the two girls, and then soon after that, my son and her they broke up. And so he had this whole thought that she caused the breakup. My daughter did.
Oh.
Without hearing anything from her that was the case, but he was just kind of putting two and two together. They were spending a lot of time together, but he conveniently left out that they were probably going to split up anyway, and so on and so forth. I said, well, you believe this thought that, your sister was involved and this was the reason. What if she was just your champion, was trying to get her not to break up with you? Or maybe she could see that this wasn't a great fit and was like literally was your biggest cheerleader. You don't know her intentions. You didn't hear any of the conversations. You haven't talked to her about it. Like, there's so much you're just believing this one particular story. How is that impacting your relationship with your sister? How would it be different if you thought the opposite, that she was actually your biggest fan and was really looking out for you? She loves you so much. It's like, yeah, I'd feel different. It's like, I don't know if either's true. But which one's going to serve you better?
The turnarounds.
Yeah.
Like in Byron Katie's work,
Yeah.
I used to go see her events, and I mean, God bless these people that would, kind of be in the line of fire.
Mm-hmm.
But in that situation, one of the turnarounds that she would inevitably get to would have been something like, okay, my sister caused my relationship to break up. One of the turnarounds would be, I caused my relationship to break up. It gets very confrontational, at a point when you're really willing to go there and apply that radical self-honesty and radical open-mindedness, right? It's so interesting to observe that, so many of those kind of little interventions she would do, and people would be like, holy shit, in that moment, have this epiphany, like, actually, I did cause the thing, But you would never be able to get there until you go through that process of inquiry and have the willingness to question what you believe to be true and be willing to let it go, which the ego hates. I mean, you're working against like a real force.
Yes. It's writing down all the turnarounds, all the things, the most opposite things you can think of, and seeing the truth in all of them, because everything is true to some degree. I would say there's some element of it. In one of the things I love most about her work is it takes us out of victim. And it's like, oh, I have the power to change all of this. It's all up in my head. It's all my read of this situation. And so much of it, I know when I've done that work, was just about my own ego and trying to protect myself and make the other person wrong. And that is just disempowering, because it's like, oh, someone has the ability to make me feel bad. What's my part in it? And yeah, so her work's incredible. I don't necessarily subscribe to it on a worksheet level, but it does give me so much clarity when I'm in those stuck spots of like, how is this belief serving me? Because I'm fucking stuck right now, and it being true doesn't seem to be serving me because I'm not doing anything. So what about it is my part? And I think that's, really, and honestly, for the book, one thing I was super careful is I didn't want it to be prescriptive. It's another thing of the book that I'm going to unlearn everything, but I didn't want it to be hey, 7 steps to recreate and have this life. It's like, yeah, I kind of had all this shit going on, and this is where I was completely fucking it up. And this is where I was doing things to try to learn about myself and figure this out, and it was helpful. And then, oh, whoops, there I go again. And for me, I think it's particularly poignant for men kind of either entering or about to or in that midlife phase. And I think it's helpful for women who have men as partners to understand. I think it's a pretty resonant story for men in how we think we're meant to show up in the world as providers and protectors. And I think that is absolutely important. But for me, when I over-identified with that, and I had already provided and I had already protected, and then years later, that's my North Star, it's a problem because I lacked presence as a husband, as a father, in other ways in my life. And so in some ways, it's a way to, I hope, when they read it, they're like, you're exactly where you need to be. Because there were places I wanted to be other than where I was, but I was there. And I eventually did the work to figure out how I was fucking things up, but like how I wasn't getting it right in the way that I wanted to. So I think in that way, it's just very approachable. And if you are looking for like a self-help book in that regard, it's not that book. I'm not going to tell you what to do at all. But I will share a lot of my stories. Some stuff I've certainly shared on my podcast, but it's just kind of a tale kind of through the uncomfortable middle. I think that's on kind of the description. It's like, it's often called a midlife crisis, but I really think it's an opportunity for us to reevaluate what our North Star is, like what's important, how am I living? Is this track I've been on that I've been beholden to from a young age, is it serving me? Is it giving me the things I thought when I started to believe the thing when I was 8 or 10 or 12? Because a lot of these beliefs are seeded back then. And in my case, no, it wasn't. I'm super grateful for all that stuff. And I still have the ability to do those things that were created out of my desire to have a financially successful life. But when I saw that again was one game and that is not actually who I am, that is like that classic resume virtue versus eulogy virtue, like that's all the resume stuff, like the stuff I want to be shared at my funeral is not any of that stuff. And so what is that stuff? And for people that are starting to feel that dissonance in their life, where that old way that we were told was the way is not making sense, and there are things that are calling us that we don't know why I feel so off. So we're asking for letting go of those old parts, those old patterns, reshaping some of them, but letting go maybe of a lot of them, and then just stepping into this new life, which, as you know, dark night of the soul is a motherfucker. When your belief system starts to get challenged and proven false, and if you have the balls to go deeper into that inquiry, I think you'll find most of the things you were told growing up are they're just not true. And sometimes they're blatant lies, and there's nefarious stuff, and sometimes it's just people don't know any better. But getting into that season of that dark night, as terrifying as that is, I believe, on the other side of that is complete liberation. You're not beholden to any of those things anymore. Now, the terrifying part is I've spent my entire life creating this avatar of who I am, and he's a chameleon because he can be a bunch of different things. Okay, cool, but also when I didn't have that in check, I was wearing the mask in all these different areas. And so now it's like, I know the different roles I can play. I can fit into so many different groups, but I'm much more consistent with who I am in those groups than I ever was before, because I've started to bring in the old parts in a way that I've integrated into who I really am at like more like a soul level, the things that are really meaningful to me, things that are my values that I just stand by. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck and they go into dependency or addiction because they're like, they don't have the means. They don't have a support group. They don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about if they hear this for the first time. So I've been very fortunate that I've had incredible mentors. I've had a deep curiosity. I've had the space and the resources to explore these things. So I know that's different, from a lot of people in the book. That's part of the reason I wanted to share the book. Part of the reason I have the podcast, to just give people ideas about what has moved me, what has moved other people, and they can kind of pick and choose what is available to them, what feels most resonant, and then explore those things. But, what I would say is that, like, don't take my word for it. Certainly, don't take your word for any of this stuff. What resonates, then go explore that for yourself. Have your own experience, and cool. Then But it was certainly an interesting kind of process to go through that in the book. I know, like, one of the big final edits was going through it and literally just deleting stuff that felt just a little bit too prescriptive. And this is really, it's kind of my main thing, is I don't want anyone to feel like I'm telling them what to do. I'm not. I'm trying to use my own experiences, with as much honesty and vulnerability, while keeping some things sacred that are to my family or whatever. Like, I didn't share everything, but I felt like I shared the things that were most meaningful and tried to keep it along the lines of what's most resonant for men in the kind of male experience.
Beautiful. Well said.
Thank you.
We're going to put your book, along with anything else that's clickable, in the show notes at lukestory.com/Cal. We'll link to your podcast and the episodes we've done together. We've had some fun podcasts. For those that haven't heard them, I think I've republished all of them in our feed here, but you'll do these like quadcasts or, multiple people, and we just kind of end up shooting the shit. And some of those have been so fun. There's like no plan at all. And I walk in going, well, yeah, what, isn't there a topic or something? Not really. We just start rapping. And some of those have been like my favorite podcast of all time. So I'm excited for people that aren't familiar with your work to get your book. Buy his book, you guys. It's really hard to write a book. Anyone that's done it knows it's the kind of thing you don't know until you do it. And you go, holy shit. They don't just come out of nowhere. It takes a lot of work. My last question for you is this, Cal. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings that have influenced your life and made you who you are today?
In no particular order, the first one that comes to mind is Boyd Varty in The Lion Tracker's Guide to Life. I got to meet Boyd back in 2019. I went to his Track Your Life retreat at Londolozi in South Africa. It was a 5-day retreat with, there were 6 of us there, 6 men. It's a really small group. I didn't know any of the guys. Met Boyd, and just immediately like built a beautiful relationship with him. And so his book has been really influential in my book. I didn't write it because he wrote a book, but when I was writing a book, I'm like, I want it to feel like Boyd's book, that it's one of those books that people read, it lands for them, it's resonant, there's stuff in there, there's these gems, and they want to buy it for their friends. I think Boyd, I've probably bought 250 to 300 copies and given them out because I think it's that awesome of a book. And so Boyd, and he's obviously done a ton of Byron Katie's work and Martha Beck, and he's just a beautiful teacher. I would say early on when I was on this, I really was drawn to the work of Adyashanti. He just made everything make sense. He was the one who really drilled down this idea of kind of don't speak about anything that you don't have direct experience with. And so that was really meaningful for me as I did the podcast, and I just wanted to, I wanted to ask the questions and then have my own experience, start to base my own understanding and beliefs on what I experienced. So he's been great. Oh man, I mean, there's so many too. I went through I think a really important period where I was listening to a lot of Ram Dass's stuff too. And once I finally started to get it, it like all came through. And I say one of his greatest teachings for me is basically kind of everyone shows up as your guru. And I started to really appreciate Peyton and my kids showing up as my guru. And just like accepting things kind of as they are. Like I remember one time in particular, we had an issue with our pool where the slate on the pool was cracking. And then it was leaking, and it was a kind of a disaster. And it, like, on the one level, it shouldn't have happened, right? That's a classic. But it had happened, and it was happening, and it was going to need to get fixed. And I remember a woman who works with us and helps us around the house was like just bitching about it, bitching about the pool people. How could this happen? And I was just like, it's happened. We will sort out who's paying for what, if they'll pay for some, if I pay for, I mean, I don't know. But rather than get caught in, how did this happen? This shouldn't have happened, which is common for a lot of us. I just, in that moment, this was like 3 years ago, I was like, it's happening. And it was like, I could just see in that moment how I could absolutely cause myself to suffer if I wanted to go on that narrative. But for the time being, like, it's what's happening. And that type of acceptance has been really helpful for me when there's stress in the family, when there's stress with these finances. Yeah, how did this happen? How could I? Okay, get curious about that. But at the end of the day, it's happening. And so get real with that has been really helpful. So I say those three guys are the first that come to mind.
Beautiful. Well, I'm glad we finally got to do this, dude.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
One thing I love about having friends on the show is I get to learn so much more about them. You know, sometimes you see people all the time. It's like, even just reading your book or just whizzing through it this morning, I was like, you know, learned a little bit about your childhood, where you come from. I go, I consider Cal one of my good friends, and I don't even know a lot of this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's always fun to have this opportunity. I feel like in these conversations, we could be having the exact same conversation with no microphones or cameras.
It's like
I mean, it might get a little weirder.
Just a little, yeah, for sure.
A little more personal maybe in some cases, but mostly, I mean, this is like, if you and I sat down like, hey, let's catch up, and we spent a couple hours talking, it would look very similar to what we just did, you know? So I appreciate you making the time.
Yeah, thanks, man. And yeah, no, it's funny. I'll just say, I want to say it's been 3 years or so since I told you found out I was writing a book, and you're like, come on the podcast. I was like, absolutely. And for so long, I had a weird relationship with the book in general, which I think that resonates with you. But I was so honored that you asked me to come on the podcast. And when I was finally ready to, you actually were the one who I think said something to me, like, you want to come on the podcast now that the book's out? And so the reason I bring this up is, you know, the part of the reason I got into podcasting, I would say 3, potentially 4 people were there, but it was you with the work you were doing. I had just built a relationship with Kyle Kingsbury, who has a podcast, and then Aubrey. And I just watched, it was almost like a blend of the 3 of you guys with a little maybe Joe Rogan mixed in, because I can get a little bro-y too. But just is almost the way you held things, the sacred, right? And certainly a lot of the topics, I would say all your topics I'm interested in. Most of them I want to have guests on the podcast regarding. Some of it's just I'm not there yet. And then with Aubrey and Kyle, so the 3 of you with a little Joe Rogan mix in were my kind of Mount Rushmore of getting into podcasting. And I just have such a deep appreciation for you guys for doing the early work. I mean, I came in 2020. That podcasts were a thing for, at that point, everybody had a podcast as far as I could tell. You know what I mean? When I was getting in, I was just another podcast. So yeah, I don't know if I've ever shared that with you, but yeah, thanks for all that kind of early work and holding it for 10 plus years.
That's cool. I appreciate it. It's funny, when I started in 2016, I felt like I was so late. And I felt like everyone has a podcast already. And now, 10 years later, I'm like, holy shit, now seriously, everyone has a podcast.
Yeah.
Which is great because more information gets out. But it's like I was telling you earlier, it's funny. I've never really thought about ratings or downloads or how relevant you are until recently, when I just see people that kind of just come out of nowhere and they have a really like instantly massive platform. It definitely gets me thinking, like, wow, is there something more or different I could be doing? It's just feel like I'm sort of habituated into this is what I do. But yeah, I'm looking for some more inspiration, ways to do things differently, or I don't know exactly. I'm kind of at a point that you were describing earlier in some ways of just, I won't say a midlife crisis, but definitely just kind of questioning what I'm doing, where I want to go, how I want this thing to continue, in what format, etc. So it's reassuring to hear that it was, inspirational to you. Reminds me. That happens every time I meet someone. It's like, man, I've gotten so much out of your podcast. I go, okay, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And 10 years doing something, you go like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? I just keep doing it. I don't really stop and question it,
Yeah, and I think you and I are both in a season of questioning all these ways that we've been living our lives over the last number of years. And it's like, what do I actually want to carry forward, and in what fashion do I want to do it?
Yeah.
And it may not be changing in a significant way, but changing in a way that, is much, we kind of reignite that inspiration. And I think a lot of it has to do with decluttering. We start doing all these things to build a business. And then it's like, okay, what is actually moving the needle, and what is just draining my focus? But I think we need to get to these points where it's fucking kind of, some nights you're not sleeping great, and other days your fucking head's spinning, and it's like, okay, I need to give this some space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been helpful.
For sure.
Still
all right, dude.
Yeah.
Well, we did it. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
What's up, friends? Glad you could hang out with me for this week's episode of The Lifestylist. If you want to make sure you never miss a single damn thing, hit that subscribe or follow button right now, because new episodes drop every Tuesday. Plus, the last Friday of every month, we do our raw Ask Me Anything session based on your questions. And here's something a lot of listeners don't know. At lukestroy.com/podcast, you can search the entire back catalog. I'm talking over 600 episodes of biohacking, spirituality, healing, and straight up truth bombs. You can punch in any topic or guest you're curious about, and you'll pull up exactly what you want in seconds. And hey, if today's episode moved you, share it with a friend. Text it, post it, slide it into a DM, whatever. Word of mouth is how this community grows. And I've got one request for you. If you've gotten value from this show, one simple way to give back is to leave a quick rating and review. It really helps me reach new people and lets me know which episodes hit the hardest. And I can't emphasize enough how much your rating and review matters. There's a reason why almost every host begs their audiences to do it, but unfortunately, most listeners don't take action. So be the one who does. And once you do, go back and hit up lukestroy.com/podcast, where you can dive into all the archives, the audio, video, show notes, and of course, transcripts. Thanks in advance for supporting the show. And until next time, be well, my friends.